American Beauty is a film that focuses on identity and beauty. These words mean nothing by themselves. Their meaning comes from many places and details in the work that we'll delve into to figure out what it all meant. Set in the American 1990s, the then present, American Beauty's setting immediately establishes a world where purpose is an unknown. Many were calling it the end of history, a time where conflict over land and ideology on a global scale were things of the past. A time where we could finally look into the mirror and try to surmise what our existence truly was meant for. The notion there was no purpose was a depressing thought shared by the collective, and with it comes the perfect backdrop for our ensemble. American Beauty is a film shot with purpose, meaning every shot is pretty well thought out. Whether it's the framing of characters to appear larger and therefore stronger in repeated shots, cutting away during dialogue to show the emotion more so than the intentionally conventional dialogue, or the effective use of editing, minimal lighting, and music to make a scene truly feel like fantasy. Going over every scene would take too long, but more specifics will be discussed as more ground is covered. One last thing to mention before getting into the nitty-gritty is that the music works wonders in establishing mood in scenes and expressing to the audience what they should be feeling about a given moment. Not that it's not worth discussing further, but it's a device that works in tandem to create meaning in the work, starting with tone. Which is pretty perfectly split between somber overtones and lighthearted undertones.
Honest, and so they've asked us. You couldn't possibly care less, could you?
Well, what do you expect?
The comedy relief is used to break up sadness as usual,
Honey, don't be weird.
but also acts to highlight the fact that all these events aren't the end-all, be-all, most terrible thing to happen to a person. Unlike stories that are intentionally dire throughout to show just how bad a situation is, these moments work as a way to downplay the negative aspects just enough to make it realistic and to ground our characters in a believable world. The full major cast is comprised of people going through identity crises or being lost to chasing an identity.
One must project an image of success at all times.
Teenage angst,
Someone really should just put him out of his misery.
Want me to kill him for you?
midlife crisis,
Things have changed since 1973.
retirement jitters,
I'm sorry, what?
split persona, being put on a pedestal,
I knew what they were thinking. Just like I knew guys at school thought about me when they jerked off.
being dampened emotionally.
Mom, I want you to meet somebody.
All of these and a few minor things are on display and felt throughout the entire film.
Look, Mom, I really don't feel like having a Kodak moment here, okay?
You ungrateful little brat!
All of these acts are shown to be withholding, life-consuming, or imprisoning. They end up making each person a cardboard-thin stand-in for the lifestyle they choose to go after.
For you, Brad, I got 5.
Some of this is front-loaded in the beginning, while other bits are doled out over time, like say with Ricky.
It's the whole thing, Dad. I don't feel that's anything to be ashamed of.
His being split is shown early on,
Well, it is. Yeah, you're right.
but the full awful impact that style has only hits its peak after spending more time with him. We'll get into the motif that is beauty in a minute, but for now it's important to note that Ricky is portrayed as having the answer.
In the world. I feel like I can't take it.
Yet the film decides to show how terrible his life being that person is, i.e. the person to listen to in order to have a new perspective, and that guy just placating to someone else's will.
You need discipline. Yes, sir. Thank you for trying to teach me.
In fact, the other people who follow him aren't really following him. Lester sees in Ricky freedom more so than insight,
I think you just became my personal hero.
shown in his actions of also quitting a job and taking up drugs. However, from this point, Lester isn't following the ideal of beauty, but of relaxation, wish fulfillment, nostalgia, and childhood, or rather teenage vigor. Only in the end does this change, but we'll get to that. The other person in the story that follows Ricky's ways is the only person to not quite be in the same position as everyone else. Jane is going through an identity crisis, don't get me wrong, but she hasn't taken that first step. She's just wading in other people's quicksand.
You are a total prostitute.
Hey, that's how things really are. Don't.
Honestly though, the film never portrays her as quite getting it either.
It's weird watching myself. I don't like how I look.
She understands more towards the end of the narrative, but she's still focused on small happiness as opposed to the joy that the larger idea of beauty gives off. With everyone else being portrayed negatively as disposable,
I am sick and tired of being treated like I don't exist.
narrowly focused,
Lester, you're gonna spill beer on the couch.
split on portrayal of self, put on an unachievable pedestal, unable to understand others,
You said your partner, so, what's your business?
or themselves, and so on. Until their identity is stepped away from for moments or months. The film seems to want these people to seem broken and lost, with only glimpses outside of that. So what about what they're all missing? While explaining the characters, I pretty heavily discussed the most of identity, but worked around the idea of beauty as motif. Beauty is portrayed as pretty much anything, as long as it's small.
For me, it was lying on my back at Boy Scout camp, watching falling stars.
The small things in life, if they are meaningless, only great to the individual, simply generically beautiful.
Just look at everything you have! When I was your age, I lived in a duplex. We didn't even have our own house.
Express forces beyond our control.
That's the day I realized that there was this entire life behind things.
Things we failed at, are objectively sad, or just
But I did see this homeless woman who froze to death once, just laying there on the sidewalk. She looked really sad.
are. In the world of the film, it's these small things we look over or take for granted that give joy. Not a small smile or a minute of happiness, but pure joy.
Yeah, well, at least I'm not ugly.
There are no definitive answers to what is beautiful.
Yes, you are.
In fact, some forms get put down, but are then reaffirmed by others.
You couldn't be ordinary if you tried.
Which leads to the single most used symbol of the work, the rose. Anyone can tell you a rose symbolizes love and beauty, but it's also a symbol of pain from those things, and a step towards something outside of living to survive, i.e. plants as decor as opposed to food. The rose, in context with the film, is all of these things at once. It parallels Angela the most, and is used heavily when she's around, but it extends as something that washes over the film so perfectly. Same as the idea of capturing beauty or happiness. Whether it's the continued use of the camera, something that literally captures moments in time,
Video's a poor excuse, I know. But it helps me remember.
or say someone trying to capture the happiness they felt in days gone by. Subtext is apparent through the lens of everything else discussed thus far. How all the characters and their interactions create motif and outline the two major buzzwords creates the underpinning that we call subtext, and it all leads to theme. Identity is used as a synonym for meaningful life in some circles. Trying to force an identity is as problematic as having none at all. It makes us narrow-minded and withholds joy. Even living within an established life, where you'd think one could build on themselves, it still can keep people in a depressive state. So how do we avoid this? Perhaps shedding off that past obsession with the image being chased. Maybe it's just relaxing, feels good to indulge in nostalgia and have the things you at one point only dreamed of, even the things that made you feel guilty. Obsession often leads to new obsession, unfortunately, which can get out of hand or inappropriate. Taking control of a shadow or mirror self seems great, but it involves so much turmoil, yet there are those who live inside that state constantly. which is another way to try and escape these identity crises, but as stated, it creates a person that can be happy and sees the things other people take for granted, while on the other hand keeps them from experiencing full joy due to their split. So, if too much understanding, quote unquote, at one time has us getting obsessed with a new vision, and only having it half the time still has a person miserable, then wouldn't embracing it throughout life mean that's the way to live? Sure, but who's like that? I mean, there are going to be those who haven't taken that first step into their mold yet, but who would understand how to subvert this longing for meaning and identity from the beginning of life? Actually, what even is this understanding that these partially enlightened are seeing? Joy from beauty in the small things? What does that entail? Why is it important? Is there beauty in what's behind things? Enough to create meaning? Probably not. But isn't there joy in those things? Those small things, if they are meaningless, only great to the individual, simply generically beautiful, express forces beyond our control, things we failed at, are objectively sad, or just are.
How are you?
Isn't that something? At least more than presenting ourselves for other people in hopes that it exudes purpose.
I'm great.
Thank you.